Their factories are closing all over China because we're not taking their product. We don't want their product unless they're going to be fair with us.
So they said that about 30% of manufacturing right now is outside China. It's been getting more expensive. They're looking at Bangladesh and Vietnam, Cambodia. Those are some of the regions they've been looking. Actually, Pakistan.
As trade tensions between Washington and Beijing escalate, Apple is adapting to stay ahead of the game.
He also wants to impose a 25% tariff on Apple unless iPhones start being made in the United States.
In a shocking turn of events, the world's manufacturing giant is facing an unprecedented crisis. Apple and Amazon, two of the biggest tech titans, are pulling out of China, leaving behind a trail of abandoned factories and economic turmoil. Also, a significant number of multinational companies have begun to scale back operations or exit China, driven by a combination of geopolitical tensions, rising labor costs, regulatory scrutiny, and the need to diversify supply chains. Notable firms such as Mitsubishi, Samsung, Adidas, Intel, Microsoft, Nike, and Dell have either reduced their presence or shifted parts of their manufacturing to countries like Vietnam, India, and Mexico. As we all know, China has been a global manufacturing giant for decades, making almost 30% of the world's products, from electronics to clothes, worth over $380 billion. That kind of industrial power really helped boost China's rise on the world stage, but things aren't quite the same anymore. They've taken a bit of a turn. Lately, we're seeing a big shift. Major players like Apple, Intel, Microsoft, Nike, and Amazon are starting to spread their wings, moving parts of their supply chains elsewhere. Apple, for example, is dropping $1.5 billion on a new facility in India. Most companies are not abandoning China entirely. Instead, they are adopting a hybrid model, maintaining some operations in China while expanding into other countries. One of the biggest reasons behind China's manufacturing crisis is the rising cost of labor. For years, cheap labor was China's secret weapon, but not anymore. Over the past decade, labor costs in China have more than doubled. For example, by 2025, average annual manufacturing wages in the public sector reached 107,987 renminbi, about $14,700, while private sector wages were 71,467 renminbi, about $9,860. Minimum wages in major cities like Shanghai are now 2,690 renminbi per month. This wage gap has made China far less competitive in the global market. Big tech players are taking notice. Apple, for instance, has ramped up its iPhone production in India. Today, about 20% of all iPhones are made there. That shift, now valued at $22 billion, marks a massive change, especially considering that just 20 years ago, only about 1% of this production happened in India. Today, countries like India and Vietnam are becoming go-to destinations for companies aiming to slash costs. They're stepping up as serious contenders to China's long-held manufacturing dominance, something that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Adding fuel to the fire, former President Donald Trump has threatened Apple with a 25% tariff on iPhones manufactured outside the United States. This pressure aims to push Apple to relocate its production to the US, a move analysts deem unrealistic due to the complexity and cost involved. But that wasn't all. Trump also had a message for Apple CEO Tim Cook, who had recently visited him at the White House. Trump insisted that iPhones sold in America should be made in America, not in India or anywhere else. And if they're not, he's threatening a 25% tariff on iPhones manufactured overseas. This tough stance signals a major shift in trade policy that could have huge implications for global supply chains and for American consumers. In this regard, Apple's shares fell by 4% following these announcements, highlighting the market's sensitivity to such geopolitical maneuvers. Fast forward to 2025, and the US-China trade war is reaching new heights. The United States is now slapping tariffs of up to 245% on Chinese imports, a massive jump from previous years, and China's not backing down either. They've fired back with tariffs of their own, some going as high as 125% on American-made goods. On top of that, both countries have rolled out strict bans on key products and imposed restrictions on selected companies. It's a full-blown trade standoff, and one of the most intense we've seen in modern economic history. But for China, the stakes are even higher. The country is quickly becoming a less attractive and far more expensive place to set up manufacturing operations. And here's the kicker. All of this is happening just a few years after the COVID-19 pandemic already exposed serious weaknesses in global supply chains. China, once seen as the backbone of global production, still hasn't fully recovered. And these new tariffs and trade tensions, they're making a bad situation even worse. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has estimated that such trade tensions have shaved off approximately 0.5 percentage points from global economic growth in 2025. One of the most notable shifts resulting from this crisis is the relocation of manufacturing operations. Factors such as rising labor costs in China, ongoing trade disputes, and unpredictable supply chain disruptions have driven businesses to explore other options. Countries like Vietnam, Mexico, and India have emerged as attractive alternatives, offering cost-effective labor and favorable trade incentives. As China grapples with these economic hurdles, businesses worldwide are reassessing their reliance on Chinese manufacturing. The evolving landscape presents both challenges and opportunities, prompting a re-evaluation of global supply chains and economic strategies. China's manufacturing sector is facing significant challenges, leading to increased unemployment rates among factory workers. In early 2025, the unemployment rate in this sector reached 6.5%, up from 4.2% the previous year. China's manufacturing crisis isn't just causing trouble for businesses, it's hitting consumers hard too. With rising production costs and ongoing supply chain disruptions, prices for everyday goods are climbing. Electronics, clothing, household items, you name it. They're more expensive now than they were just a couple of years ago. At the peak of these massive tariff hikes, experts estimated that between 4 and 6 million jobs were at risk, and some projections even warned of 6 to 9 million if the highest tariffs had stayed in place. Many young students, whose families rely on factory jobs to pay for college or even just daily expenses, are now facing an uncertain future. The loss of income at home means less support for their education and dreams, hitting the next generation hard. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, a survey of China's factory activity in April 2025 revealed a sharp slowdown. Manufacturing shrank to its lowest point in nearly 2 years, thanks to lost export orders and cutbacks in production. This drop shows how widespread and serious the fallout is, not just a local problem, but a global crisis affecting workers, families, and entire industries everywhere. The ripple effects are real, and they're threatening the futures of both workers and students alike. This situation demands our attention before it gets even worse. As the Chinese manufacturing crisis deepens, factories struggling to meet demand means fewer products on shelves and longer wait times. China's manufacturing sector is in deep trouble, and with it, the country risks losing its spot as a global powerhouse. Much of China's influence, alliances, and power were built on the strength of its manufacturing and economic muscle. Without that foundation, everything could collapse like a house of cards. That's why Xi Jinping is seriously concerned and scrambling to fix the situation Beijing now faces. What happens next isn't just crucial for China, it's a big deal for the entire world economy. Will China adapt and hold on to its superpower status? Or will its dominance start to fade? Only time will tell, but one thing's certain. The world is watching, and the stakes couldn't be higher. As China's manufacturing sector faces significant challenges, countries like Vietnam, India, and Mexico are stepping up as viable alternatives. Vietnam in particular has become a magnet for foreign investment, especially in electronics and apparel manufacturing. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, Vietnam attracted nearly $11 billion in foreign direct investment, marking a 34.7% increase compared to the same period in 2024. This surge highlights Vietnam's growing appeal as a manufacturing destination. Major global companies, including Apple and Samsung, have already invested heavily in the country, capitalizing on its competitive labor costs and strategic location. Businesses are flocking to Vietnam because of its affordable labor, better infrastructure, and rising status as a dependable manufacturing center. For companies searching for a China alternative, Vietnam is ticking all the boxes right now. What we're seeing is that Vietnam isn't just a temporary fix, it's becoming a serious long-term player in global manufacturing. Major tech giants are leading the charge. Companies like Samsung, Intel, and LG have made massive investments there. Samsung has turned Vietnam into one of its core manufacturing hubs for everything from smartphones to appliances. Intel has pumped money into chip assembly and testing facilities in Ho Chi Minh City, and LG is producing electronics and home goods in the country too. All of this is helping cement Vietnam's role as a trusted center for tech production. And it's not just tech. Vietnam's also dominating in apparel. Big brands like Nike, Adidas, and H&M have been using Vietnam for years to make shoes and clothes. With labor costs way lower than China's, it's become the go-to spot for companies wanting to keep quality high and costs down. It's not just that Vietnam is cheaper than China, it's that it's becoming smarter, more agile, and better prepared for the future of manufacturing. As more global companies pour in investments, Vietnam is showing the world that it's not just an alternative, it's a real contender. It's stepping up to challenge the old manufacturing powerhouses and carve out its place as a major force in the global economy. As India is quickly emerging as a rising star in global manufacturing, more and more companies are shifting their operations from China to India. It's becoming a top choice for businesses looking to tap into new opportunities and reduce their reliance on China. India's becoming a serious player in global manufacturing, thanks to its huge workforce, low labor costs, and pro-investment policies. Apple's a prime example, starting with iPhone production in Tamil Nadu and now expanding to make its latest models in new billion-dollar Foxconn facilities. This shows Apple's long-term bet on India as a major manufacturing base. Not only that, India's skilled labor force and booming market are attracting big tech players looking to expand. Companies like Dell and HP have already moved parts of their production to India, drawn by the lower labor costs and smoother regulatory environment. It's all part of a bigger shift as global tech giants work to diversify their supply chains and cut back on dependence on China. China's trying to hold on to its spot in the global economy, even as rising labor costs and political tensions make things tougher. But there's another layer to this: environmental impact. Years of rapid industrial growth have led to major pollution problems, pushing the government to tighten regulations. That means factories now have to meet stricter emissions standards, which makes operations more expensive and slows things down. Because of all this, the global trade game is changing. Companies aren't just chasing the cheapest option anymore. They're looking for resilience, flexibility, and sustainability. That's why we're seeing a shift toward a more decentralized manufacturing model, with places like Vietnam, India, and Mexico stepping up in a big way. Still, China isn't out of the picture. It's holding strong in high-tech and value-added sectors, making sure it stays relevant in this new global landscape. This manufacturing crisis isn't just a setback, it's a chance to rethink everything. It opens the door for innovation, global collaboration, and a more sustainable economic future. What do you think about Apple and other tech giants' move? Is China's manufacturing empire really collapsing, or is this just a temporary shift? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one.